Hey guys, Puju here. It's September 1st, and September 1st means it's Labor Day weekend. And Labor Day weekend means a 3-day weekend for most of us, and myself included. But anyway, to this point, I finally did what I said I was going to do. What I've been saying I was going to do for nearly 6 months now. And that is replace a wingtip nav and strobe light on my timber. This is my original timber. My first one I bought, it's 3 years old already. I had changed the other wingtip light last year. And the story behind that is that I had it on floats one time and I flew it off salt water in a little small bay, but it was salt water nonetheless at a campsite where we were camping. And the wingtips had gotten dipped in the water on some bad takeoffs. But the wingtips got a little wet, and over time the lights started to corrode. I noticed that. About 4 months later, my green light had virtually all gone out. It was just not there anymore. And then the strobe light on that same side went out. So I ended up soldering in a new strobe light and green light. Then over the next 4 or 5 months, the red light started to fade. It started to get dim. I don't know how bad the strobe was getting, but I just noticed the red light was getting really dim. So over the last several months, you've been hearing me talk about when I was flying this thing near dusk, how I really needed to get that light fixed before I did any night flying. So this weekend, I went to task and did that. Lights out. Of course, the landing lights, they're always bright. And that's a nice thing about this airplane here in comparison to some other planes like the Mall. This timber, you can see the landing lights from farther away than you can see the airplane at night. And as you can tell, the right hand nav light, very bright. There you go, very bright when you get the right angle on it. These are bright LEDs. They're not just typical, they're 5mm LEDs, but they're sold and advertised as bright LEDs. Now here's the one I just changed, the red one, very bright. And of course I did the strobe next to it. Okay, I'm going to bring the airplane up closer so I can show you how this is done. I'm not going to open it all up for you so you can see all the wiring, but I'll point things out and talk you through how I did this. This is the bulb right here that I just replaced last night. I did both the, you can do them individually if you want to, but I did both the strobe and the red light because their common wire is soldered together, so you're going to have to unsolder both, at least on one pole, to replace one. So I decided just to do them both. As you can tell, if you look at it, if I can stop wiggling the stupid camera, there we go. You can see the corrosion on the back side of the lights themselves where the contacts were. Those are where I cut them, but nonetheless you can see the corrosion along the contacts. And I think that's what happened, was it built up resistance and then the bulbs went bad. So I ended up replacing them. I left the resistors in the airplane, and I'll show you a picture here in just a second that has the bulb from my last wing that I did. I left the resistors in the airplane because the resistors really don't go bad. You know, they're sealed units, so unless you actually physically harm them, the likelihood of them going bad is slim to none. So more than likely you're going to be replacing the lamp itself if you have to replace anything. Alright, this is the right wingtip. This is the one I replaced last year. Now what you're going to notice right off is I don't have a green bulb on there. And the reason is the lights I purchased, they light up green and red, but they just are clear in appearance. It's the LED lights, green and red, but the bulb is clear when you look at it. So this has already been replaced. So on your plane you'll probably see the red bulb out front, and you'll have the white strobe off to the side beside it, or behind it. What you'd want to do if you were going to replace this, there's plenty of slack wire, and the wire looks like it's uninsulated. It's very thin wire, but it is a coated insulation, so they are insulated even though they don't look it. But what you do is this plastic piece right here, the lens that holds the bulbs in place, they just are two-pronged plastic pieces that go through the foam. And the glue is probably hot glue, kind of flexible. So all you do is you just grab a hold of this and just work it slowly with your thumb and forefinger, and slowly pull it out with the two prongs that come right out. And the wires would come out with them. There's plenty of slack in there, and if you're careful with it and you pull it all the way out, you'll get the poles, the contacts will come out. You'll see where they're soldered to a small resistor, which is soldered to one of those wires I was talking about, those coated wires. And you can pull them out probably about 2 inches or 2.5 inches if you're careful. What we're looking at here is a screenshot of the right hand LED bulbs as they were removed last year from the airplane. When you pull the lights out of the wingtip, you can pull the bulbs out of the actual lens cover that has a plastic piece with two prongs. Remove the lights from there, and you just have these lights with their two contact probes soldered to the common single wire, which is their common wire, and then the other two prongs will be soldered to individual resistors. I only show one here. The other one is probably because I cut the wire here and the resistor is still back out of the screen. But you're going to have two resistors, one resistor for each of the two lights. These are 200 ohm resistors, and if you do the math with the voltage drop off these lights and the voltage supplied out of the receiver, or the controller, it's going to come down to they want either 100 to 200 ohm resistors, and they put in 200 ohm resistors. As I said, they should never go bad as long as you keep them soldered onto the original wiring and you only unsolder the light side of it all. They should stay with the airplane wire the whole time, and they should be just fine. You'll also note with this one too, when I pulled it out, it had all that corrosion on the contacts. The part that corrodes the most on these lights is the actual light contact prongs. And it gets up inside the base, so you can see here all this corrosion. This is all, I believe, from salt water, exposure to salt water. So what you're going to need if you want to change your lights on your wingtip, you're going to need a fine point soldering iron with a fine point contact on it, and of course a holder. You're going to need some solder which has a rosin core to it. In other words, it has flux built into the solder. If you want extra flux to work with to keep your tip clean or to help tin some of the wires, you can get some flux. You're also going to need, because these wires are very small, very thin, very flimsy, this I got at Harbor Freight, I believe. It has a lit magnifying glass here. You get a higher zoom and then your standard zoom. It's on a working stand, and you have two arms with alligator clips on these things. So it's basically a micro miniature type of workstation. You'll want to get something like this. It's just a lot easier. What I end up doing is when I have the wires in the lights out of the airplane hanging here, I'll use these alligator clips and I'll clip it onto either the resistor itself, the case, or just the head of it on the actual wire side. But I prefer to clip it right onto the case of the resistor, just gently. You can put some tape in here if you don't want to cut into it, and it just holds the wire steady. And you can take your soldering iron and unsolder where the contact of the light solders to the resistor wire, and it will fall away. Or you can actually hold the light with your hand and the soldering iron with your other hand, heat up that contact point just behind the resistor, and you can pull the light away. You do that with both resistors, and I just cut. Typically I'll take a cutter and I'll cut the prongs right at the end of the lights themselves, and I'll remove the lights. That's what I did with this one here. I actually cut the LED prongs short, close to the light, so they were still soldered to the resistors and they were still soldered to the common wire. And I just used this clip here to hold the resistor, and I just put a soldering iron on the solder joint, and if you want to, some tweezers, you can just pull that excess cut prong from the light away. And you can do the same thing. You can remove both of the prongs from the common side of the lights. You can unsolder them from that common wire the same way. Then you just take some flux and some clean solder, and you clean up the ends of the wire on the resistor, the soldered side of the resistor. You want to clean up that wire, single piece of wire, and you do that on both resistors, and you clean up the common wire.